And you're still watching the news at 10 p.m. And coming up on the show, we are joined by Dr. Kent NNADOZIE, who is the Secretary of FAO International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. Thank you so much, Dr. Kent, for having time to sit down with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just give us an idea of what this whole treaty is all about. What is in it?
Well, the treaty was established by countries to enable countries to exchange crops that they need to sustain their agricultural system, and to plants that or crops that breeders need and farmers need to cultivate and to adapt to different climatic and environmental conditions. So the treaty covers a lot of aspects of what we call genetic resources, but otherwise seeds and crops that that are essential for food security.
So this is about countries sharing different crops?
Yes, sharing crops. So the treaty provides a platform to facilitate that exchange. Because no country is self-dependent on food, every country depends on crops from other regions and other countries. So the way the treaty has established a system to enable countries to assess and get the seeds and crops that they need to sustain their agricultural systems.
I want to go straight to the forum that's happening tomorrow. This is the 7th time we're having it. Of course, we know a lot has been discussed, but let's look at tomorrow. What are some of the issues we're looking at, and what should we say has been achieved in the past forums that we've held somewhere elsewhere?
Yes, normally this meeting happens once every 2 years. It is the assembly of all the member states. So they meet once every 2 years to assess what they have done and to plan for the next 2 years. But this particular meeting is very critical because it's at this meeting that the review of the main systems of the treaty is being carried out. And a lot of decisions are going to be made on how to improve the system and how it functions, and how to mobilize additional resources to implement the work program of the treaty, and especially to be able to support programs in developing countries and support farmers who are the main constituency of the treaty.
It all looks like you're trying to enhance the whole system, and one would ask, where's the private sector in this? Because I understand you're doing this in partnership with the different governments. Yes,
indeed. The governments the countries are member states, but they have major stakeholder groups, which are first farmers, then have a private sector, civil society, and then they have the international agricultural research system. That's part of it. For the private sector, because they are the ones that carry out commercial breeding and seed production and sales. And to be able to do that, they also need access to good planting material, good breeding materials. And those cannot be found in only one place. So they are the ones that get a lot of, they get these materials and they develop new varieties and they sell it. So the treaty has established a system where if a company takes material from the system, develops new varieties, commercializes it, the company should be able to pay back some money back into the system to sustain it and keep it going.
It's one thing to talk about the conference,
yes,
the forum, and the treaty, how it's supposed to help this, but also another thing to touch on how it's going to increase productivity, increase yields, or do this to the farmers deep in the villages. How
yes.
are we reaching out to them?
Yeah, in addition to the fact that the treaty itself establishes this multilateral system that, or rather, a basket of crops that is governed under a very common, standards. It also facilitates the implementation of projects for farmers in developing countries. So far, we've invested over $20 million supporting projects in developing countries, especially at the very, very local level. Because that is the main target, because we know the farmers are the custodians of a lot of the material we plant, but they also need new materials and new crops or new crop varieties that they will plant, and they're the basis of the food security of any nation.
Now, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, that's the theme this year.
Yes,
Can you just give us a brief overview of this?
Yes, indeed. It is recognized that the 2030 Agenda was a globally agreed framework for development for the next, until the 2030. So what this session is doing is to show the relevance and the contribution of the treaty to this global agenda, especially in fighting hunger, increasing livelihoods, and in terms of also gender issues. So it contributes directly to goal 1, 2, and 15, in particular the goal that deals with conservation of genetic resources and sustainable use of biodiversity. And also, of course, fighting hunger, because the treaty provides the avenue and the platform to provide crops that can increase yield, maintain livelihoods, as well as adapt to new change in climatic change.
For the first time to be held in sub-Saharan Africa, I want us to look back to the 7 years. Yeah. How has the region been able to benefit from this? In what ways? Yes, what would you say are some of the things that actually the sub-Saharan African region has been able to do?
Well, first is the fact that they have now access to a broader range of planting material and material for breeding. The second is that a lot of the projects that the treaty that's been sponsored under the treaty are implemented in the region, in the African region. So and then there are also other aspects of capacity building that help training breeders and training gene bank managers, the experts that maintain crops in gene banks, whether locally or more advanced situations or systems.
Looking at the forum that's happening tomorrow for the next 3 days, what should we expect?
Yes, next 5 days, because it runs until Friday. Oh. Yes, of course, there are a number of issues on the table. One, I said, is looking at ways to enhance the system, increase the funding streams that come to the treaty, but hopefully we would have a major outcome and agreement by the countries on this and how to move forward on this number of issues.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right. Okay.
And if you're watching the news at 10 p.m., we'll take a very short break. We'll be back.